Hey, what's up, everybody? Championship Leadership Podcast here, and today I'm excited. We have Tony Whatley. He's down in Houston, Texas, and he is the host of the 365 Driven Podcast. And it's the day after Thanksgiving today. If you're listening to this, so welcome here today, Tony. Thank you so much for taking some time.
Hey, Nate, thanks for having me on the show, man, and happy Thanksgiving to you and the family there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Same to you guys. And any Black Friday craziness going on in your family right now?
Man, absolutely not. I always tell the people that follow me, if they're out there engaging in that kind of chaos, that they probably shouldn't be doing that because they're not taking any advice from me. So maybe we can't even be friends, like you can't even be my friend if you're out there shopping today. It's crazy.
I agree. And I mean, it can all be done from your computer nowadays anyway. So
yeah. I don't like having to carry my arms and stuff and go out there to go shopping.
Yeah,
there's too many crazy people, too many criminals. People out there breaking into cars, coming to where all the crowds are. There's people getting their purses snatched. I mean, there's fights in the parking lot. There's fights inside the store. It's crazy what people will do to save like $20, man.
It is, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah, really crazy. Hey, first off, to get us started here, I would love to ask you this question. Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you? What is championship leadership to you when you hear that?
Man, leadership is one of those near and dear topics to my heart, and I've always had a good experience from that. I had a good role model, my dad. My dad was a gunny sergeant in the U.S. Marines, Vietnam vet. After he got out of the military, he worked in the chemical refineries here in Houston, and I worked for him for 2 summers, so I got to see him as a leader in that role with the different crew out there. And one of the things I always admired, even when I was 18, 19 years old working for him, was that the people that reported to him, he's probably like 20, 30 people at the time, would always say, like, we enjoy working for your dad. He's a good guy, and he's just a very good leader. And I didn't know what all that meant when I was 18, 19 years old. We just don't know. We don't have our own experiences in life at that point. But what it came down to is he really just cared about everybody on an individual basis. And that's something that I took into my own corporate experience and also starting companies of my own, which grew to very successful levels, was that if you don't know what the individual motivators are for each and every one of the people on your team, chances are you're not a good leader. If you're not good at making effective decisions and actually doing something about it, that other than just trying to collect data all day long and not making any decisions, you're an ineffective leader. And you start thinking about this, it's like there's so many people out there that just think that the title that they wear bestows them the leadership status. Boy, as you know, Nate, I'm sure you've covered it on probably some of your previous podcasts, is that leadership is not a title. It's a character. It's a persona. It's a mindset. So if you have manager on your title, doesn't mean you're a leader. If you have CEO on your title, doesn't mean you're a leader. Founder doesn't mean you're a leader. Leaders is actually something we have to be cognizant and aware of and really start to study these things. And really, it comes down to human psychology and human emotional control, a lot of different things, influence. There's a lot of different strategies with leadership. But if you want to become a good leader, it's not something you're born with. It's something you have to work for.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's, like you said, just because you're in a leadership position doesn't mean you are a leader, and also, like, you don't have to be in a leadership position to be a leader as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you could give us a little background on you and, what's put you on this path? I know you touched a little bit about working with your father, a great leader. But yeah, what journey, what path have you been on? What are you up to that has brought you to this point where you are today?
Well, I guess, yeah, the father's side was covered, so I'll cover the mother's side. She worked in the public schools her entire career, cafeteria lady, serving food to children. So
Awesome.
My dad was the disciplinarian in regards to habits and just showing up on time and anything that was just physical discipline. My mom was the disciplinarian when it came to education. So school was very important to her. She's a Japanese immigrant, and I did not miss a single day of school from kindergarten through graduation. Not one. Perfect
Really?
Attendance, 12 years.
That's so
And
awesome.
the thing is that even if I was sick or had chicken pox, she's like, get your ass on the bus. If you're not dying, get on the bus. So that's how Japanese women, or Japanese in general, very much they value education. And she realized that the education here in the United States wasn't as good as what they can get in Japan. That's just facts.
Yeah.
So to miss even one day would even make it worse. So you think about that way. So she valued education. And so I got the disciplinary on both sides of that. But we grew up lower middle class, Basically, we lived in a little bit nicer town than we could probably afford. We always lived in fixer-upper homes, worked as a family, me and my sister and the four of us, to really just fix homes back up to live in for 3 or 4 years, then upgrade to the next fixer-upper. We always bought usually the ugliest house in the neighborhood and just kind of worked our way up that regard. So I learned to value things. You know, I didn't have any money, so we didn't have anybody in my family with money. I never had anybody in my family ever go to college, didn't have anybody that owned businesses. But the beauty of me living in proximity to people that had affluent neighborhoods was that I could get on my bicycle or my skateboard and just go ride around and look at these things. And I knew that they existed. It was something that was within reach. And I was always curious. I was always asking people, hey, how did you do that? What did it take to get that? How much does that house cost? And what is the career that got you there? And I was always asking questions, taking notes. And that's who I became. And it's like, I never thought I would become a millionaire, much less a multimillionaire. Just didn't think like that. I just didn't think it was possible based on my own family, because the social program that we grow into, we just kind of adopt, and it's just we carry on our, basically our family history. That's just the legacy that we kind of get stuck in unless we break out of that. So I was the first one in my family to go to college, paid for it myself, and I was the first one in my family to own a business and start a business. Did that. So it kind of that's I've always had that entrepreneurship mindset. I've always been a daredevil. I've always been like, I wanted to be a stunt man and a race car driver or a fighter pilot when I was a kid. So it kind of gives you an idea of who my character, my personality is. I've always been like, I probably should have died several times, like all the stupid stuff I've done.
Yeah.
But that also leads to becoming a really strong entrepreneur. And I still have that way. I still like the adrenaline rush.
Yeah. So you're a car guy, is that right?
That's right. Car fanatic. I'd say I'm a car fanatic. There's a difference. There's different levels of car guy for sure.
Yeah. And you're on the far right of the extremes. Is that right? Like
absolutely.
Fanatic.
I build, race, restore.
Yeah.
Third generation. My granddad was into cars. My dad was into cars. But although they had like cool cars and muscle cars, 60s, 70s and things like that, they never modified them or raced them. Probably because we didn't have the money to do it, to be honest. Yeah. Neither of them. And for me, I was the first one to actually start building and racing cars. So I was a little bit more extreme. And so I actually have a 2,400 square foot shop I built on the back of my property that's got lifts, tire machine. Like I have a full shop. I can do everything but paint. Wow. I could actually paint if I wanted to, but it's just, environmental crap and a lot of expensive, I don't want to have to put a spray booth up there. It takes too much floor space. I can do everything, and I build cars from the ground up. So I've got a 1969 Camaro that I built from a rust bucket, from every nut and bolt and wire on that car I put in.
Awesome.
So things like that. And I've got some high horsepower modern cars like Dodge Vipers. Got one that's about 1,300 horsepower that I build to go quarter mile and half mile and standing mile type events. So again, there's the adrenaline rush, and I do things at a high level. So even the 69 that I built, most people think, oh, I build cars too. Well, this one was actually on the cover of Super Chevy. So I build things as a hobby at a very high level.
Yeah. So, I've been following you for a while, and I remember this was a post you made quite a while ago, but you talked about, I believe there was a time where you almost, where you like near death experience racing and how that was a big shift. I talk often about turning points in our lives, critical moments for the guests. And it seems like that was one for you. Would you be willing to share that and what that was for you?
Absolutely, man. I'll tell this in the full narrative mode because I love the podcasting, the storytelling. So I actually gave a award-winning speech on this very incident.
Oh, wow.
And it did really well because of the emotional draw, but I'll just tell you the narrative version of it. So probably about 4 years ago, I get asked to do a lot of test driving for manufacturers, performance shops, even General Motors and different companies like to throw me the keys with their newest cars or the high horsepower things to go try to either extract a better quarter mile time or a lap time at the road course out of these things, and something I have a lot of fun doing. So I was driving for a local performance shop that had 1,000 horsepower twin turbo Viper, and they were trying to set a new national record for it. So I was at the track with my own car, and they're like, hey, would you mind making a couple passes? The car wasn't fully lined out. So I knew that I could do it because the car I drive was actually 300 or 400 horsepower more anyways, similar platforms. Like, I got this. I know how to do this. So about top of third gear, around 130 miles per hour, something in the rear suspension came loose or broke, which causes on an independent rear suspension car, the rear wheel to kick out. It's almost like pushing a shopping cart backwards and the wheel's turning, right? So even though the steering wheel's straight, the rear wheel's making the turn. So that pulled me against the right wall I was in the right lane, and it pulled me against the right concrete wall. And I didn't really know exactly what had happened at the moment. So I was kind of angry at that moment because I damaged someone else's car and I'd never
Yeah.
actually got out of line like that. I usually recover those pretty easy. And so I started to slow down. And as I touched the brake and came off the wall, that wheel kicked back out. The wall was actually holding it straight, right?
Oh yeah.
And then it went hard left. And now I'm looking at the wall on the other side of the lane doing 130 miles per hour concrete Jersey barriers in a sports car. And I thought to myself, well, here I go. Because I
Yeah.
really thought in that moment I was going to die. Because like, there's no way I'm going to hit this concrete wall at 130 miles per hour in a sports car, like,
Yeah.
and survive this. Like, I've seen too many bad things in my life. And so obviously I hit the thing, I survived. And all I could think about was like, I don't know if I'm injured or anything. It was nighttime. The lights were flickering. It was at the end of the track, shut down area. And I just remember all the noise and the engine and just screeching metal and things bending and just going crazy and glass and airbag deployed. And the entire cabin's full of like that white powdery smoke. And it's just flashing dark light, dark light. And all I could remember thinking about was stay awake, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. Cause I didn't know how, if I was injured or not. I just knew that I was awake. And I
Yeah.
knew that from race training that most people die in fire. So I knew that I had to get out of that vehicle as soon as I could. And it was still sliding and it felt like an eternity, but it's probably a few seconds, but it's that
Mm-hmm.
speed. And so I'm hearing all the noises and and I'm like, just stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And then as soon as the door, as soon as the car came to a stop, I pushed the door open. It was forced closed because the fender on that side had been pushed into the door. So I had to, basically open that door really hard to get out, and not knowing if I'm injured or not. I didn't know if I was missing legs or what. I just knew I was conscious, and that was all that mattered. I had to do what I could. And so I get out and I started looking around and I realize I'm not injured. I don't feel any pain unless there's an adrenaline rush kicking in. Maybe I am, but I
Yeah.
just don't know. And I hear people running up, my friends are at the starting line. They're running up the quarter-mile track and shouting, and, because it looked really bad from the back. And then the ambulance is pulling up and the fire truck's pulling up. And I just remember being really calm and peaceful. Even in that moment when I was approaching that wall, I had no fear in that moment, which is really strange because as the car started to get out of line before I contacted the wall initially, I did feel fear because you always feel that adrenaline fear. Like, I got this, I'll recover. Let me just straighten it out. And then it got on the wall. So it went from fear and control to anger of damaging it to peacefulness, like 3 emotions within seconds. And I
Wow.
just remember there was no life flashing before my eyes. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing, like no regrets. It was just, I thought I was just going to die. I just really
Yeah.
thought, well, here I go. I remember muttering that to myself, like those very words are still, they're always going to be imprinted in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I get out of the car and you would think that you would have the adrenaline shakes or just something. Cause we've all been some traumatic experience where you're like, your hand is like just shaking. And I think like, I took my helmet off. I'm looking at the car and people running up and like, hey, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And then the ambulance comes in, the paramedic, and they get me in the back. I take my shirt off and she's feeling me around, like seeing if I'm injured anywhere, just, checking my vitals. And then, I'm just really calm, just really calm in that moment. I don't know if I was in shock or what, but I was just really calm, but I had very clear thoughts about everything. I wasn't like zoned out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her, she just looks at me. She goes, you want to know something strange? And I was like, what? And she said, you're remarkably calm for someone who's just been in a major accident. Like, she goes, people crash out here almost every day that we see. And I see a lot of people and inspect a lot of people, but she's like, you're really calm. Like, and she showed me my heart rate is like calm, like super calm.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's just really unusual. I just, I thought you would know. And it's like, she's like, are you okay? Do you feel all right? Cause maybe she's thinking like brain injury or something. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, no, I feel okay. And I knew my name and no memory issues, no concussion issues. I mean, I had full safety gear on, helmet on, and all that. So it was really weird, dude. And I just remembered in that moment thinking, man, why am I still here? What the car, I mean, the car was demolished. There was wheels laying off the car. The entire front of the car was caved in up to the door and had no injuries. I was like, I wasn't sore. I was like, this is kind of strange. And I just remember the rest of that week. And I got home, like my friend drove me home, and I didn't even tell my wife. It was late at night and she was sleeping. I didn't wake her up, and because I knew that would just put her into a panic. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let her sleep, and I'm just gonna go to bed.
Wow.
And then when I wake up, and she got up in the morning, and then I told her because I was like, I didn't want her to do that, because if I would have told her that night, she would have just been up all night, and then it would have been selfish, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't sleep that well, but I kind of just was sitting there thinking, thinking
Yeah.
and thinking. I said, what if I had died that night? What if I had passed? And I started thinking about how would people remember me? And when I really come to it, I started, okay, who are my other friends that had died? Because, in this car scene, motorcycle scene, we see a lot of people pass away. I mean, we lose friends like every
Mm-hmm.
quarter, it seems. And
Mm.
it's always the same thing. Like so-and-so was a nice guy. So-and-so had a cool car.
Yeah.
It's just very, very superficial
Yeah.
type things because we don't really get to know people on a higher level. We don't get to know how they think. We don't get to see the actions that we don't get to see the things that they're passionate about or the things they're trying to impact the world, because all we see is the surface level things of them being a nice guy and they have a bunch of cool cars. So I would have been known as, yeah, Tony was a millionaire, built companies, had some cool cars.
Yeah.
I get it. There's people maybe listening going, dude, that's not so bad, but that's not enough.
Right.
Like being not so bad is not enough. So I really started thinking, I guess I was around 43 at the time. I'm 47 now.
Mm-hmm.
And what it really started to paint the picture to me is I'm not showing a sense of urgency to impact the world because I've already had financial success. Sold my first company at age 34. And I always knew that I was going to become more financially successful, more influential, this and that, because I was on that trajectory. I was always doing the right things. I've always been that way. But the thing is that I have a story to tell to help other people become more successful. I've helped people build 7 and 8 figure companies, but they were only my friends. They were my close inner circle proximity. Those people were the only ones that got to benefit from my knowledge. I said, that's just not good enough, man. I was like, I have the story, the skill, the energy, but I'm not the right person yet. So I was just really hiding from the camera, hiding from the microphone, hiding from the stage, because I had the financial success. I didn't need that. I didn't crave that for the fame. It was just, I'm good, man. I can keep doing this. I don't need to go do all that. I'm good. So it was kind of like, if you know me, you're going to benefit from it. So I really started thinking about that. I was like, what do I really love to do? And it's me as teaching. And I said, I need to become the right person to teach. I need to be able to step out there and be able to make videos and do stage things and get on a podcast and be interviewed and write a book. And it's like, so I wanted to really just get my message out there. And so I wrote that book, Side Hustle Millionaire, really to scale my message out. But while I was writing it, I was like, dude, I'm not going to be good at interviews. So I need to become a better public speaker. I was like, well, how do I do that? Well, go hire someone to teach you. Go join Toastmasters, take lessons, do a bunch of videos, just practice, like get better. Because I wanted to make sure that if I was going to get interviewed on a radio or a podcast or TV or whatever, I didn't get up there and embarrass myself or sound stupid and just say, and just be like this lame duck interview. So I had to go invest in those skills, man. So that's kind of where I am today now. Started doing business coaching about 2 years ago, more publicly. 365 Driven Brand. We launched in June of 2017. It's doing very well. The podcast is doing very well. But all these were a result of me deciding that my legacy just wouldn't be Tony was a nice guy with cool cars.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Wow, what a story. And the fact that you walked out of that, like with no injuries.
No, I was just sore, dude. Like a couple of massages for the month, and I was good. I was already back at the gym like the same week.
And to be able to take that and just take a look, right? And who do I want to be? What do I want people to say? And to actually then go out and do some things about it, right?
Totally, man. So the last 2 years have been very transformative, and I've got a lot of friends that have known me even since grade school, and they see me and they're always like, this is who you were meant to be. We always could see it, but you just never did it. And for me, it comes back to people being comfortable at some income level or a comfort in their lives, and they're not willing to trade the good to go get great. Mm-hmm. That's like the number one thing that keeps people from greatness is settling for good life, good income, good family, good this, good health, but they don't ever trade that to go get great.
Yeah. How deep did you, this is just a thought that's coming to me, so I'm curious, so I'm going to ask it. How deep did you dive into, how did I walk away from that? Why did I, from a spiritual or religious standpoint? Was there any piece of that, or just curious on that?
I would say that I am spiritual more than religious. I definitely would consider myself Christian. I always kept the core values and ethical. I grew up going to church as a kid and things like that. And for me, I'm an engineer too. So I also have this analytical side that questions everything. So I'm very pragmatic and logical. So I think there's a lot of things that are definitely valuable in the Bible and religion. I think it's definitely the best self-help book in the planet, in the world, right? You think about that, but it's like there's also a lot of things that are unexplained. And I never liked it, even as a kid, when I had questions, I never liked being told, well, you should never question the Bible. Like that was always
Oh,
the
okay.
cop out answer. Whenever you had like, you wanted some clarification or you wanted to
Yeah.
learn more and like, oh, well, don't, it's just what the Bible says. Like you shouldn't question them. Like for me, that's just never been good enough.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when you start looking at the universe and like all of the things that we don't know and the things that we're discovering, even on a macro or a micro, microbiome, there's so much microbiology stuff that we're still learning on a daily basis. Like there's a lot of things we still don't understand. That's not dictated by what's in a book written by a man,
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
like, that's a great baseline. I think everybody should definitely follow those core values. I definitely think that there's something else out there. I think that there's something more than what we are.
Yeah.
I just don't know what that is. And I don't know if I can clearly define that. I don't know if man can clearly define that. I mean, we don't know who's gone out there and seen it and come back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I hear you saying there wasn't a ton of struggle or conversation.
No, I didn't go through the spiritual
Yeah.
reawakening journeys like that. I just said that I'm here. There must be a reason I'm here.
There's a
And it
reason,
was
and I'm
pretty
going to take
simple.
advantage of it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it really did was created urgency. It
Yeah.
created, like, I'm not just going to sit around and wait for things to happen anymore. I'm going to do everything within my means to make them happen now.
Hmm. Yeah. I love that. What's so where does the 365 driven podcast come into play inside of all of that?
It was a long-term plan. So I was listening to podcasts. I've always been a podcast listener. I was actually a guest host on an automotive podcast about 10 years ago before podcasts were
Okay.
cool.
Yeah. Right.
But I was
Yeah.
terrible on the microphone and I felt really awkward. And luckily I had a host that could carry the mic. And I was just the guest really because I had a business in that
Yeah.
space. So he invited me on because I had a large audience, but I wasn't like good on a microphone. I was just kind of
Yeah.
feeling awkward. And so I did like maybe 10 episodes and then I was like, I'm not, I started making excuses like, I'm too busy or whatever. I just felt out of place. Right. So I put it off. And then I started always listening to podcasts because I've always been kind of a nerd that way. And I just find these things and find things that you're interested in and you're learning. And I like business and cars. And it's like, okay, I'm listening to those shows. And I said, okay, this book, that's going to be the best way for me to get my message out there. Cause the book is great, but the podcast is like the book on steroids when you think of it that way, just the value. And I said, okay, so the other way I started listening to Lewis Howes, he's got one of his top rated podcasts, The School
Yeah.
of Greatness.
Yeah.
And I like that he had a business model around that because I'd never been exposed to that. I think it was just something we do. I was like, okay, so what's his business model? So he's a business coach. He's got group coaching. He's got some speaking events, live events, and he's got this podcast. And what he would teach us, I joined his inner circle and he would teach us things like, if you're going to start a show, who do you want to have conversations with? Some people niche down too far. They go, I'm only going to talk to lawyers. Like I'm a lawyer. I'm going to talk to lawyers. I was like, is that all who you want in your network? Or is that really going to be interesting after a year? So
Yeah.
even the advice I give to people now, when they ask me about starting a podcast, like, who do you want to talk to? Who do you want in your network? Who do you want to, like, this is the best thing about podcasting is the network that we grow by having these conversations with people we would never otherwise meet or have a conversation with.
Yep.
That becomes your network. Nate, you're in my network now. I'm in your network. Like if you ever reach out, I'm like, hey, what's up, dude?
Yeah.
That's the power of podcasting. And the other aspect of podcasting is when you want to build your influence or personal brand. The beauty of podcasting is there is no algorithm to filter how many people see that. So if people subscribe to your show, every single one of them gets a notification every time you drop a new episode.
Mhm.
Where if you're trying to build your personal brand on Instagram or Facebook, only 1 to 2% of the people that follow you will get a notification or see your post, organic reach, because the algorithm limits how many people see that based on reaction. Then they start to feed it to more
Right.
people.
Yeah.
But your organic reach with podcasting is 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. What's what's a vision for you? As a championship leader, I think great leaders have great vision. They're very clear on what it is they want and where they're going and where they're headed and the impact they want to make and all of that. What is it for you next, let's just say 5 years?
365 Driven is an entrepreneurship community, but it's also, I don't believe in just financial success. I also think about mindset, relationships, and your health, things that I have a lot of passion for because I've met several people with financial success that were miserable. And I said, this is not, I don't care how rich you are. If you're miserable or unfulfilled, you see people that are severely out of shape and you're like, they're not happy about themselves. Or they're not happy about the company that they created. So to me, I like to have the all around entrepreneur that's good at everything and challenges themselves in all these different areas of life. So if you got weak relationships, maybe we can focus on that. If you're, it's the financial thing that you're wanting, maybe we need to focus on that. There's all these different things, but 365 Driven is a support network for entrepreneurs. I got a Facebook group, about 3,000 people in there, because I realized that I have two superpowers that I always can go back to. One of those is building large communities. The other one is identifying really the potential in other people that they may not necessarily see for themselves. I can see other people, I can observe their skill sets, and I can see where they could potentially be. I could see big things for people that they may not believe in themselves, but I can see that. And it always killed me to watch people just waste their potential and just squander their potential. And it used to really bother me, like especially friends. But now I learned, like, you know what? It's that whole, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, I can tell them this stuff, but if they're not willing to take the steps, or if they don't want that for themselves, then they're never going to get there anyway. So I need to quit wasting my time and investing emotional capital and trying to make them better, because they just don't want to do it. So I start looking for people that actually do want to improve and become more successful and become more fit, have better relationships. There's thousands, if not millions, of people out there that want those things. So I said, I'm a good person to teach that, because that's what I exemplify. So 365 Driven, I launched to be 365 driven every day. It's put some kind of effort in. I'm not a workaholic, but you got to put some kind of effort in every day. So maybe you're working 5 days a week, but maybe on the weekends, you should be reading some books and learning some things and investing in your own skill set or your own knowledge to make yourself better. Don't be skipping the gym on the weekends just because it's the weekend. Just be a little bit 365 driven every day. And that's where I started to launch that. And, it's growing. So, some backstory, some context, I built some massive online communities in the automotive space. So ls1tech.com was the first community I built. It grew to 300,000 registered members. And this is pre-social.
Yeah,
this is 2001 to 2007. Facebook didn't even launch till 2009. So I did this all before social media, just growing it organically by doing giveaways and having live events and racing and things like that to draw people and build a community. So I'm very good at facilitating growing massive communities. The second one I grew was performancetrucks.net. That one grew to about 190,000 members. So again, two massive communities that just me being a leader, learning as I went, just kind of figured it out. I've become a servant leader. I'm not the person that stands on top of the hill and pounds my chest and acts like I'm super awesome and I'm the king. I'm the one that interacts and becomes like part of the community and just facilitates the success of other people, because when I can help other people, it always comes back to me as well. So it's just like this nice reciprocity.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that. And that's it's impressive to be able to do that. It's challenging to grow an audience like that. So such a skill set to have, for sure. What's who are a few leaders, or one or two leaders that really have impacted you? I know you are a big believer in not only as a coach, but investing in others to help you as well. And so I'm just interested, who are some people that have impacted you, and more than like who they are, but like, how have they really impacted you?
So I've got two paid mentors right now. And you're right. I think that if you're going to be a coach, if you're not investing in the same process and improving yourself, then how can you charge other people to be a coach? Totally. I just don't agree with it. You need to be either part of a high-end mastermind of your peers or a coaching program yourself. So currently my two coaches at this point are in the Arete Syndicate. So my coaches are Andy Frizella and Ed Milet. So two guys that built 9-figure companies from zero. They were both broke as shit. And built 9-figure companies, are very, very wealthy now. They're both in their 40s, and they have the tough love about them. They don't like excuses. They basically hold people accountable. They got different dynamics. So I'll tell you about like Andy. Andy's definitely the tell it like it is guy. He's the MF CEO Project. If you go find his podcast, he's usually in the top 10 on all of iTunes.
Yeah, it's an awesome podcast.
So MF CEO, Andy's tough love, and he's just very blunt. He doesn't like any excuses, and that's who I am. So we have a good resonation. Plus, he's a major car guy, so we love that about each other. And I've actually interviewed him on my show. We talked about cars, so imagine that. Right. Ed is a little bit different. Ed is definitely more of the compassionate listener, and he's a hell of a speaker. If you ever get to see Ed Milet speak in person at a live event, you'll find that he's one of the best speakers you'll ever see, because he's very well in tune with the emotional side and the storytelling side of speaking. So if I want to become the best speaker, and I love to stand on stages now,
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn from somebody that actually does the things at a highest level. So Ed Milet is an incredible speaker, storyteller, connection. Like he's got a lot of connectivity. If you ever have a conversation with him, he's very present and he's very, if you listen to his podcast, another top rated iTunes podcast, Ed Milet Show, he's very good at listening and answering questions and just being very present in the moment. And he's thinking on such a deep level. And what I like is, like, you listen to him, he's very good at acknowledging people, and he can see like the skills and the abilities and the character within his guests. And he's like, I want to acknowledge you on this. I see this within you. And the way you're answering is this. So he's very emotional quotient, emotional intelligent, like probably one of the highest I've ever met.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for sharing those. Those are, they haven't come out of nowhere, that's for sure, but they've definitely come on the scene strong in the last few years, and they're doing some great things. And I wouldn't be surprised to see myself check them out at the Arte Syndicate here one of these days. But
Yep.
Tell me, as we wrap this up, what are one or two things that you could give to the listeners as a piece of advice, maybe, some principles that you live by, that would help them move forward, that they could apply into their life right away and really make an impact on them?
I'll give you two. The two main ones that I always think about when what holds most people back, whether that's success or career or whatever you're trying to get, or you're trying to start something new, or maybe you just want to improve. First of all, you got to look about the people that you surround yourself with. We hear this our entire lives, even as we're kids. Your parents were like, I don't like you hanging out with those boys. I don't like you hanging out with those girls. Like, your parents had a good judge of character. Yeah. So even as a kid, we knew this advice, but the thing is, we don't really take advice. We hear that, and we know that, we understand that's a fundamental. The problem is anything that's fundamental, we've heard it our whole lives, and we just go, yeah, I got that. We just kind of dismiss it. And we always think that there's some silver bullet or magic potion that's going to solve the problems. The thing is, like, you got to go back and look at the fundamentals and ask yourself, like, with clear eyes, am I really doing that? Am I really focusing on this? Am I really making actions to that? Because you'll find that most people allow toxic and negative people within their proximity because they know people. Because we're humans, we like to have connections. We're pack animals by nature. And, over the millions of years of human evolution, if we were to be outcast from the pack, that means we would die. We would lose our shelter. We would lose our food. We would lose our procreation, sex. All that stuff would be gone, and would be ourselves. So we're hardwired to be fitting in packs, even when people aren't good for us. So there's so many people out there just holding on to toxic energy, toxic people, negative people, because maybe they went to high school with them, or maybe they work with them, or maybe they just have some similar interest or hobby in common. That's the problem that's going to hold you back. So we always hear the thing, like, you're going to be the the average of the 5 people you hang around. There's some accuracy to that, because I remember the first time I heard that a few times, like, that's some bullshit.
Yeah, right.
Like that's some bullshit. Like, I'm looking around and, like, you're like, holy shit, me and my friends are kind of the same, but maybe we're all good. Maybe we're all making 6 figures. Maybe we're just all good. But if you want to make 7 figures, maybe you're not hanging around the right people. Because here's the thing, is that I'm not saying that all these people are bad people. That's the differentiator. Like toxic and negative people are not necessarily bad people, but their energy that they're feeding you with, and the passive aggressive comments and the lack of support or the ridicule of your dreams, is what's going to keep you from doing things, because you start to lose the belief in yourself, which is keeping you from taking action. So when you go, hey, Mike, I want to start this new company and I want to do this. And Mike goes, well, man, that sounds tough. Or, man, I don't know if I would do that. Or, man, yeah, are you sure you want to do that? Like, that seems like a lot of work, and that's a negative response to something. Or maybe they laugh at you, like, dude, that's a stupid idea. And if you're surrounding yourself with people that are holding you back like that, and the people that you may actually love them, you may trust their judgment, but that's what's going to happen, is you're asking advice from people who have never accomplished the things that you want to learn or have achieved. So you need to start learning to find people that have achieved the things that you want to do with your life and asking them for advice, and then start disregarding the advice from the people who have never done or never even tried to do things that you want. Just thank them for the advice, but understand, like, thanks, man, I really appreciate that. Then you just kind of delete it, like, as soon as you walk away, because those people only give you advice based on their own level of risk, tolerance. They give it from their own level of fear. They give it from their own level of insecurity. So these are the people you're surrounded. So think about that. If you're hanging around a bunch of millionaires who have done the things that you want to do, and you ask the same questions, you're going to get a lot different responses from them versus your other friends, even if you love them. So the quickest way, like everybody's like, well, how do I know if someone's toxic? It's a real simple question. It's an energy indicator. So here's the thing. It's not woo. I'm not trying to get all woo on you. Think about this. Every time you come up with somebody, even if you know them or you meet somebody in person for the first time, there's an energy that there's a field that we put out. Like, and they say it can reach out like 6 feet away. Like animals are very good at seeing this. Animals can see threats or sniff threats or sense threats before it even, there's no visual cues.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some energy that we don't understand that we put out when we walk into a room or we meet somebody or two people's energies intersect. And the thing is that people are either giving you energy or they're stealing your energy. That's the best way to understand what toxic and negative people are. And so
that's great.
If you want a tangible way to think of that, think about like when you're looking at your cell phone and somebody's calling you and you see their name on the screen. Do you wince and go, oh, man? Or do you go, damn, I can't wait to answer this phone and talk to that person?
Yeah.
That's going to be a great indicator. Like that person, the first one is taking your energy. They're robbing you of energy because you're feeling drained after every interaction, whether it's drama or they're complaining to you or they're passive aggressively knocking you down a level to keep you at the same level as them. Like there's all these things that just take your energy. And then there's other people that feed you energy and they bring you energy and they empower you and they believe in you and like start surrounding yourself with those people that bring you energy, start creating some distance. You can be polite, create some distance from the people that are just robbing. Hey, I'm busy. Hey, can I take a rain check? Hey, oh man, I got this appointment coming up. Hey, I got to go to the doctor. Just tell them whatever you can to just create some proximity because those people will always continue to rob your energy for the rest of your life. And you need every piece of energy that you can have. So that's just one tip, man, getting rid of the circle, but you could do it. You could do it politely. You could do it professionally. There's ways to do that. Learn to influence on those. The other one would just be to stop worrying about what other people think and say about you. Because there's a lot of people think about fear of failure. Like, oh, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of failing. It's like, no, you're not. Nobody's afraid of failing. We fail all the time. We go to the gym. We failed on the last set, on the last rep. We do things. We do all kinds of things we fail. We fail at our relationships. We fail at parenting our kids. We fail at paying the bills on time, whatever. There's a lot of failures. What we're really worried about is what other people are going to say about our failures. When we're really honest with ourselves, we're not fearing the failure. We're feeling what your neighbors or your friends or your family are going to say about your failures. So that all goes back to the fear of worrying about being judged, the fear of being ridiculed, all these things that have to do with stepping out. That's going to, the thing about, I just told you earlier about the relationships, like millions of years of evolution keep you like wanting to be in the pack.
Yeah. And
when you start to realize that what outstanding people do is they literally are outstanding. They're standing out from the pack, doing things.
It separates themselves from
that. So you got to lose the fear of worrying about what other people think or say about you. That is the number one thing that keeps most people from ever doing anything in life.
Yeah, totally. Well, that was fantastic. And I love the example of like if the name pops up on your phone, because I totally resonated with that. Like, yeah, there's some people where it's just a time suck and it's like, I did not want to answer that, let it go to voicemail. And there's others that it's like, I'll answer right away. So that's perfect. Appreciate that. What are some ways that the listeners can find out more about you and what you got going on?
Hey, thanks, Nate. But my website, 365driven.com, 365driven.com. You'll find links to my book, my podcast, and all my social media channels on that page.
Awesome. Thank you so much today, Tony, for taking some time with us. I really appreciate it. Had a great time.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Nate.
Yeah.